Hi, my name is F.Tenelli, and this program is about how to interpret music or understand composers' intentions. Academics say that one must learn how to read the score. Sounds like a good answer at the first glance, but at the moment we try to follow the score to the letter, it gives us a mechanical outcome. It gives us an idea that no matter how detailed the score is, something is still missing. And this something happens to be the most important thing in music. We say it's the soul of the music. I think we have this challenge now only because in some end of the 19th century musicians started to regard music scores as sacred, therefore to be followed to the letter, not realizing that the written score is just a pointer and not it. There are several reasons for that attitude. First one, separations of musicians and composers. Musician and composer used to be one, like Chopin, Mozart, you name it. Second, musicians become more superficial in understanding music since they cannot compose or even analyze the piece. Before, all the musicians, including singers, knew perfectly how to compose or at least how to analyze the music. Democracy, in a strange way, contributed to this phenomena. Powerful becomes the one who has more people under his control. Conductor. Individuality is neglected, except for conductors, of course. Our question, should we or should we not respect the score as sacred, as we told in most times? If we ask a composer himself, ask for example any modern composer, he would say that there is much more in the score than the score can grasp. The question is then, why does he use the score as means? Because man did not find better ways. When a great conductor like Karajan or Bernstein are talking about knowing correct tempi in their vision is absolute, is nothing but using their political power to protect their own vision and nothing else. Let's look at his double standard from the example of Bernstein changing his own tempi according to his mood. In his lecture, you can see that on a video of Delight and Dangers of Ambiguity. Actually, it's a very interesting lecture. Maestro Bernstein admits using tempo according to his own mood and not some kind of a sacred truth coming from fourth dimension. Very interesting episode when Leonid Bernstein conducted Brahms' piano concerto with great Glenn Gould, and they had totally different visions on the tempi. You see, Bernstein did finally accept Gould's tempi, saying that he disagreed with it, though Gould had such a wonderful vision that convinced Bernstein to yield. What do you think? Would it be the same compromise if it was not great Gould? Remember that Toscanini allowed Chaliapin to sing free, the way he wanted. But that was when Fyodor was on the top and Toscanini was just a young conductor. Later, Toscanini totally disrespected any interpretational move from any singer. More, he gets angry at intelligent singers like Valdengo, who was making a good point at Falstaff's rehearsal. Toscanini is definitely bitten by intelligent remark, and his answer expresses himself in a future action. He starts to pick up at the baritone later. You can hear that in the rehearsals of Toscanini's Falstaff that is available. This example shows that Toscanini is more concerned about his ego than the music itself. Then who gives the right to anybody to claim the truth? So today, power of interpretation is given to those who have power and has nothing to do with some objective music score reading. To understand why score is not a Bible, but just a bunch of useful pointers, we have to get into the process called composition, to get inside the composer's brain first. Because of some brainwashing, we may think that composer first sees the score in his head and later just puts it on paper. If that's true, the score is sacred because it's in the score and not just a pointer. I believe that any talented composer hears his music first, or gets it through improvisational inspiration, and then puts it on paper. Great Richard Strauss had also a very correct attitude towards interpretation, to my point. He thought that when composer puts his final work on paper, it does not belong to him anymore. It belongs to interpreter. The score is like a beautiful digital picture, is always much lesser than original. Of course, there is a concern that interpreter may not always have a good taste, and that fact brought the following idea. I don't trust any interpreter, only ones with great taste, therefore others should follow the score to the letter. You see, the composers are humans, and like humans, they have egos. Some big composers have huge egos like Verdi, Wagner, and some smaller, Strauss, Mozart. And their demand towards interpretation freedom would be somewhat different. Now, let's look at the interpretation from the interpreter point of view, or how different musicians will understand the score in reality, in playing. I suggest that the interpretation is not encouraged in today's musical schools. All they teach, and they teach it well, is how to read the score mechanically, with no rubato or any other possible liberties. If you ask a music student what is rubato, or can it sing a play with rubato, his answer will be something like that. Oh, no, my teacher told me not to even try before I become a very pro musician, whenever it happens. Let me disappoint you. Rubato is more of a personality problem than a musical one. If you've never taken liberties free from fear and conditioning, that freedom will never come. You will mimic somebody else's rubato, but that ruins rubato notions altogether as a personal. Unfortunately, I don't see much of true interpretation in vocal music today. Singers developed a complex of inferiority towards other musicians, and especially coaches and conductors. I remember Di Stefano was singing one of the Tosti's works and gave a stunning performance of Non t'amo più. The critic's comment was like that. It was beautiful, but he ruined Tosti. Nothing left of Tosti. Listen to this nonsense. Beautiful, but ruined. Ruined because he didn't follow the score and took some liberties. In 19th century critics' reaction would be the opposite. He understood composer's intention more than the others, because his singing brought some beauty and not formality. Back then, live music was appreciated, but how do we know for sure without having some records of interpretation of that time? How was it like? We know it from books, but we don't have any records. When musicians' freedom were expropriated by dictators like Toscanini, we had a totally new style emerging into music. That style was called jazz. Of course, jazz style is very different from classical one, especially today. First of all, because it's highly inspirational and improvisational. Plus, it's different stylistically and incompatible with modern classical attitude. But except from style, it's very compatible with Baroque and early bel canto styles, just because you can see the musician's attitudes towards the score. The score of jazz and Baroque are used to have an idea of a composer, but his creativity lies in personalizing to what composer put on paper. Try, for example, read the jazz score the way it's written. You will get a terrible result. It won't sound like jazz to all jazz musicians. Imagine what would happen if jazz was born in 18th, 19th century and we had no records of it. How would we interpret it today just having jazz scores? When the rise of composers' egos, late 19th century, and conductor powers, 21st century musicians were denied to freedom of interpretation, this denial was the logical result of vocal arts decline. Singers abused the power and eventually lost it. But the movement brought a new misbalance. Total disrespect for singers' individuality. That's why some critics were saying that Maria Callas, Franco Corelli, Di Stefano, all of them in their own way brought a new sense of freedom or new bel canto. I have to mention that to be a great accompanist, either pianist or conductor, is very rare today. And believe me or not, one of the reasons they are bad accompanists, not because they know so-called composers' intentions, but it's truly difficult to be a good accompanist, so they don't bother anymore. In order to be a good accompanist, one has to sing and breathe with singers he is accompanying. Be ready for some unpredictability coming from live performance. Let's look at what one of the greatest authorities on accompaniment, Gerald Moore, said about who he considered to be the best. In his book, Singer and Accompanist, he considers Yehudi Menuhin, the violinist, American violinist, as the greatest musician he ever accompanied. He explains that Menuhin is the greatest because he's a live musician. He has ups and downs, and he's not a machine. His interpretations are always different. This is what exactly not promoted in today's career musician. If you want to make today, you got to be very professional, meaning basically having machine-like attitude. Ivo Pogorelic is one of the most creative and controversial pianists. Pogorelic won the Casa Grande competition in Terni, in Italy, and then Montreal International Musical Competition in 1980. He also, in 1980, he entered the International Frédéric Chopin Piano Competition in Warsaw and was eliminated from the third round. One of the educators, juries, Marta Argerich, proclaimed him a genius and resigned from the jury in protest. Another jury approached Ivo saying that he was the best, but it happened and she asked it about if he's a wonderful technique and everything. The answer was funny, Pogorelic style. Okay, I'll give you a masterclass if you like my technique. Ivo had clashes with Karajan too. You see, academicians have trouble of recognizing great musicians because they don't understand the essence of music. It's freedom. Any great live music should be free in essence, otherwise we become computers. Thank you very much. This was F.Tenelli. Until next time.